Hey, thanks for listening to the People, Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. Hello, everyone. People Not Titles podcast with another edition of our world-famous Market Trends, June 17th, 2025 edition. Matt, great to have you again.
Great to be here. Summer is almost here officially.
Yeah, it's a warm one today.
It's a hot one in the Chicago area. But that's okay.
We love it. We love the heat.
Exactly.
All right, Matt. So leading off, we have another NAR lawsuit, and this may be a story that repeats itself over time. Tell us about this.
One of many in the continuing saga of NAR and their members suing them.
Yes.
This one is from a California broker named John Diaz, who has filed a lawsuit against the NAR and the local realtor associations, challenging the membership fee structure as anti-competitive. And Mr. Diaz alleges that the mandatory membership fees that total in California over $1,000 annually across the multiple associations and MLS dues that they have to pay, this policy alleges disadvantages smaller brokers and stifles competition. That's the nature of this lawsuit. His concern, these fees are suppressing independent brokerages and hinder alternative business models by forcing unnecessary financial obligations to non-member agents. So the way NAR does this, and Steve, you're probably well aware of this, and many of those of you who are realtors and paying the formula, the lawsuit itself targets NAR's what's called a variable dues formula, which requires brokerages to pay dues for non-realtor licensees, even if they don't need MLS access. And so that's why this is allegedly disadvantaging the smaller brokerages.
So what would be an example of a non-realtor licensee, Matt?
So I'm a part of a brokerage. I have a real estate license. I still want to maintain my real estate license.
But I don't sell real estate.
But I'm not practicing. I'm not doing anything. And I think the term is I'm going to hang my license in your brokerage.
Yes.
Just to have it. And maybe I'll do a deal for myself someday, but maybe I won't. But I just want to maintain this. So hang my brokerage, my real estate license with this brokerage.
So I don't need the access, I don't need the benefits, but still I have to pay the dues. And a lot of people invest a lot of money to get the license.
Correct.
And so now to keep your license and to have it active, even if you just might use it someday, costs you $1,000 a year in California.
Correct. And I'm sure it's, I think we did the math at some point. I think here in the Chicago marketplace, it's between $1,000 to $1,200 for a year of dues and MLS access. So yeah, it's not inexpensive. And so people make that choice. There's obviously upfront costs when you're getting your license.
Yes.
And then to maintain your license, you're going to be paying a fair sum, which is why on last week's episode, we talked about
where does the money go?
Well, also the realtor membership.
Yeah.
You know, where it's currently, I think, 1.4 million, and next year they're budgeting and predicting for about 1.2 million.
So this is going to shake out. People feel like, you know, a lot of times people want to start a business and you think, oh, real estate, I don't have to pay a lot. It's a low investment. And what we're seeing here is you really have to pay to play. And even if you don't play, you have to pay.
Correct. So it's just not another one of the many lawsuits that are out there that are similar to this. I believe we talked about previously, there's one in Alabama, I believe one in Arizona, one in Michigan, where brokers are bringing this up with the mandatory, due structure and membership requirement. So it's a little nuanced one, this one in California. Once again, more to come on the latest NAR lawsuit.
So, Matt, is the lawsuit to try to get to lower the fees?
I think it's to stop mandatory membership.
Oh.
I believe that's what the ultimate goal is of many of these lawsuits, is the mandatory realtor membership in order to access and be a part of the MLS. That's what I believe is the ultimate goal here, but I know that the cost in this one is a factor.
So, Matt, there seems to be this, number one, we covered last last market trends, that the dues, although the NAR is not raising the fees are going towards part of it is towards legal instead
Correct.
of towards your benefits as an agent. But I see the web of the NAR slowly crumbling and cracking the noose around the agent's neck, and this is just another chip away at that.
And there will be, I agree 100%, and there will be more lawsuits like this coming on board.
Okay.
Because one broker will see this and say, yes, we're going to do this in my state. And so it'll be a state by state. Dominoes. And yes, things will ultimately change, I believe, with the membership structure, MLS access. We see what's on the horizon. And so I'm not going to be surprised if in the near future there will be a change in dues structure, payment, and requirements.
Okay, and access to the MLS.
And access to the MLS.
Okay, Matt, Lawrence Yun.
Yes.
Who is Lawrence Yun, first off?
Lawrence Yun is the longtime chief economist for NAR.
Okay.
He is very well respected. I have worked with him for many years before. Good guy.
Smart guy.
Smart guy, knows his stuff. He has been at NAR, I'm going to say, close to 15 years.
Okay.
You know,
so he's a trusted guy. He's one of the guys that didn't get the axe when it was swinging around.
Previous to him, there was I won't say revolving door of chief economists at NAR, but they were not well respected in the industry.
Okay.
And he's pretty well respected in terms of he's not going to blow smoke. He's going to keep it real. He's not going to be rah, rah, rah. This is what we hope it's going to be, which isn't true. It's here's what the facts are. Here's what my forecasts are.
He's measured.
And yeah,
not political.
He's not political, and he actually is pretty good when they rate economists of predictions.
Yes.
He's always rated pretty high. So that's who Lawrence is. So each month, which I really like, it's called an instant reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so when economic data comes out on the consumer price index or mortgage rates, they come out, NAR comes out with an instant reaction social post that sort of says, here's what we see and are reading between the lines. So last week, the consumer price index they came out with for the previous month was 2.4%.
What was his reaction to that, Matt?
And the reaction is good and bad.
Okay.
And here's what's attributed to that 2.4%. The Fed, their goal is still 2% inflation each month. We have yet to achieve that for quite a long time. 2.4 is a little higher than they wanted. But some counterpoints on this is gas and travel are down price-wise. So gas prices are down 12%, even though this week they're up a little bit because what's happening in Iran and in the Middle East.
Yep.
Airfares are also cheaper. That's because oil and gas are cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Car prices have stabilized, which that was a big thing over the last few years, is the cost of used car and new cars. But those have stabilized. But once again, the inflation is still sticky, and the driver of this 2.4% CPI is housing.
Housing costs.
Housing costs, or what we know as shelter costs, which is rent, or what rent would be in your area, hotel. And so the shelter costs, over 1/3 of the inflation index, rose to almost 4%.
So Matt, and there's a counterpoint to that in the sense of, I think everyone gets excited when they hear their home values have gone up. When home values go up, the cost of homes go up, or the cost of rents go up, or whatever it is. And so it is a good news, bad news in the sense of you have shelter prices going up, and that could be because of property appreciation and prices going up.
Absolutely. And so
and the Fed is on hold.
Right. And so I'm glad you said that, Steve.
Thank you, Matt.
So the Fed, because of they read the numbers and they are apolitical, and their goal, actually, I listened to a great Freakonomics podcast where they had the trustee board member of the Chicago Fed on, and I can't remember his name, but he was talking about, like, what is the goal of the Fed? Why does the Fed exist? And it's to create more jobs and to keep the monetary system stable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ultimate goal. So Wall Street is always hoping for additional rate cuts.
Right.
I know the current administration wants
Trump is saying cut the rate,
cut the rates. But when you look at the economic data and what's out there, it doesn't make sense. They're going to hold.
So there's a lot of pressure on the Fed to cut rates And they're holding the line right now.
Correct.
Whether it be political or not, they're holding the line.
Correct. And everybody wants a rate cut because it will stimulate and drive mortgages.
Yep.
Rates will, people will get off the fence. People will, I'm going to list my house.
Businesses start borrowing more money.
Which is good in a short-term perspective,
Yep.
but when you look at the long-term analysis, it's not the right move. So, make a long story short, there will be no rate cuts, and we don't speculate that in the near term, but as the year progresses and economic data comes in, things may change.
And you have here, Matt, that the Wall Street Journal predicted that the first rate cuts we might see are in September. And
Correct.
that's maybe we've been, and this has been something rate cut. I think we have to take our eye off the rate cut. And if you want to buy a home or you want to sell your home, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, and I took a quick look today. I think 30-year fixed average is around 6.8, 6.9, which has been steady for a couple months now.
Yes.
We want it lower. Everybody who's getting a mortgage wants it lower. But the reality is it's steady. Mm-hmm. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and back in the day, 6.8 was a good rate. And, Matt, if they do fall, 0.8 or whatever it is and get to 6, where a lot of people are predicting by the end of the year, which I'm not saying that's going to be true or false, you can refinance.
Correct. Always refinance or go into a different
product
number of terms and all that stuff.
Okay, Matt, we have great news for those who participated in the Sitzer, Burnett, and Gibson lawsuits. There were over 2.5 million claims filed. So 2.5 million home sellers submitted claims, and they got a big payoff, Matt.
You hear this long pause because it's sad. So over 2.5 million of you who participated in this settlement, you're going to receive a whopping check for $250 or around that sum.
Wow.
So all that went into this lawsuit,
all
the hoopla, all the media scrutiny, all the changes.
Benefiting, championing for the consumer, Matt.
So let's dig a little deeper into this. And let me start with, so the Sitzer Burnett settlement and lawsuit covered agent commissions. Mm-hmm. That was the one that said, you agents that are out there, you're making too much money. You're not telling and disclosing clients what your commission is. Mm-hmm. So that is now, everybody knows, the buyer side knows what they're going to pay. The list side knows what they're going to pay. No secrets or surprises. We feel that's a good thing.
Yeah, and overall, I think it's healthy for the market. I think it. We talked about this often, but I'll say it again. I think that the value of the agent has been affirmed by the market, and so their commissions have not dropped. Their work rate has, gone up even, and they.
The People Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
And they have worked hard to provide value, and they are. And they always have.
Always. The Gibson lawsuit, just to get on the other side, that was not about commissions. That was about how the NAR rules on how agents display and share the property listing information, MLSs as well. So those are the big two lawsuits against NAR. And so part of this settlement is 2.5 million home sellers submitted claims. The expected payout, as we said, is about $250 from the settlement fund. The settlement fund, by the way, is over $1 billion. And this is the sad part. So over $1 billion collected. About $370 million was used for legal fees and administration costs to do this lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So that leaves about $630 million left for you out there who may have put in your settlement claim, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
Because it's $250. Yeah. We'll buy you a couple tanks of gas.
Yep, maybe.
Grocery shopping for the week or 2 weeks, depending on where you're at. So the next step is the settlement just needs to be approved by the U.S. Court of Appeals, and that's expected early next year. And for those of you that missed out on the deadline, which I believe was a week or so ago, you may have missed that deadline and not be part of the settlement.
Matt, you want my take on this?
I would love to hear your take on this because it's going to be wise, and it's going to it's going to blow up.
Yeah, it's going to blow up. Well, okay, so you have this massive outreach that they had. It says 100 million emails, 38 million postcards were sent, and 25,000 calls and 30,000 plus emails for the administration. So it looks to me like this was just a big marketing campaign to get everyone on board that cost, they billed 200 and some, whatever, $300 million for the marketing campaign.
Yes.
You got your share of the marketing, and the attorneys wound up with the bulk of the money. So this was just a money play. I don't know that, maybe the consumers benefited a little bit by this, but there were many people that were advocating for these changes to begin with. And it's a shame it had to be at the cost of the very brokerages that were advocating for this change of buyer representation and seller representation.
And so that's where
a boondoggle. That's my boondoggle.
And do you want to hear my
perspective?
Yeah,
of course.
So that is, I believe, the issue, and that was where the problems emanate from, is NAR as the overlord of the rules, regulations. And like you said, Steve, many brokerages said that you need to be upfront. We need to be upfront on commissions.
Right.
We are going to make all our buyer's agents make their clients sign a buyer's agent agreement that spells out this. So there were many brokers and brokerages out there that were doing this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there were many others who did not, because the rules were what the rules were.
Yep.
And so now it took this massive overblown lawsuit to sort of change the system for good.
Yeah, and
where it didn't need to be that way.
Right, and the real people that felt the sting of this were the very brokers that were kind of championing for these things anyway. So it's anyway, Matt, real estate investors. This is a great story. Real estate investors, Land Trust, first off, who we're sponsored by, is venturing into and really creating great value in the investor real estate space here in Chicagoland and throughout the Midwest. But we have some news for real estate investors who are unloading homes. They unloaded homes at a record pace in 2024, and I think it represents in Chicagoland about 25% of the market. But let's talk about this, Matt.
Yeah, so this is a nationwide report, and so the stats are skewed towards certain states. But this is an interesting thing, because in so many parts of the country, real estate investors, individuals or larger companies,
BlackRock, people like that,
own large swaths of homes for investment purposes. And so this record investor sell-off story, where Steve just said over 500,000 homes were sold by investors in 2024, the highest share of total U.S. homes in more than 20 years. And it wasn't to cash in on record profits, but more so to stem losses as the markets cool and rents ease in many parts of the country.
Matt, so you had a lot of people, just anecdotal, that my experience, a lot of people that got into the VRBO space that felt like this was not providing for me the income that I want to. You have many flippers in the market and that maybe are novice or whatever, and they're not getting their return. They're kind of saying, I'm selling, I'm out. And then you have active investors that are doing it the right way. And that's where I think coaching, being part of an investment club, coaching or getting expertise and help to help you go to the next level and not kind of flush out after the first loss might be advantageous.
Coaching, education, learning from others' experience who have done this multiple times. Very helpful. Because, you could do this your own. You could do this by yourself and say, I'm going to buy this multi-generational 3-flat in my neighborhood. I'm going to do this. And when you look at the numbers, it looks good, but there's so many other variables. And unless you have that guide, coaching, and experienced partner to help you do it, it could be very challenging.
Absolutely.
And, so those are all good things. The top states for investor sales. So Illinois and Wisconsin is not part of this, but Missouri, Oklahoma, Georgia, Kansas, and Utah led the nation in investor sell-offs. But they also remain top markets for investor purchases. So a lot of people are selling, but there's still a lot of investors out there willing to go into this.
Awesome. Matt, you have some real good stats about all investor types selling. Small investors sold actually more than half of those properties, people who owned under 10 homes. Mid-size investors saw a massive drop in net purchases, and large investors sold 123,000 homes. which was a dramatic shift from their 2021 buying spree. So all segments of the market seem to be divesting themselves of these. But as you said, there's still active deals going. There's still opportunities. There's still a lot of stuff happening.
Real estate market is fluid, always changing, many people coming in and out. So yes,
Yeah.
this is
And investor purchases made up 13% of the overall buys, which was up from 2023. So even though we had a large amount of sell-offs, we still had people getting in the game.
exactly. So yeah.
Good.
Anything else you want to cover on this, Steve?
No.
But yeah, this is there will always be real estate investors. It's just that a lot of people are getting out because they're seeing certain things that don't fit their bottom line.
Matt, this is a great story to end on. It is the rise of interest in assumable mortgages. It makes sense because a lot of people are holding on to low interest notes. Tell us about the assumable mortgages.
So many people in the industry are talking if we could only get a bigger share of assumable mortgages for those of us that have a great mortgage rate, but we want to sell and we want to give our mortgage note with the 2.5% interest to Steve who wants to buy it. Let's do that.
And Matt, why? Because a couple things, right? Number one, to get the market unstuck because a lot of people are married to these interest rates. And number two, it may allow sellers to get a higher purchase price, right?
Correct.
Because if I can sell you a 2%, or 3% assumable mortgage along with my home, if I can get you into my mortgage because I was able to qualify for a great interest rate, I'm able to pass that along to you. And now all of a sudden, a higher price will equal a lower payment, and that could provide a competitive edge.
Exactly.
I'm stating the obvious for a lot of you, but
so yes,
that's what I do.
So what is an assumable mortgage? You sort of touched upon this, Steve. It allows a home buyer to take over the seller's existing mortgage, including the current interest rate and remaining balance, potentially leading to significant monthly savings. So why is this gaining attention? As we just pointed out, mortgage rates are stuck between 6.5%, 7%. People who are stuck in their mortgage and want to sell don't want to assume a new mortgage that's going to be double, if not more, than their current mortgage rate. There's a new startup, a prop tech veteran named Andy Taylor, who is also from Duran Duran.
I love it. Yes, I was just going to say that.
Andy Taylor launched a new company called Retro Rate, which is based out of California, and it's focused 100% on assumable mortgages. So this is a new company that's come into the marketplace. It's only in a handful of states.
Man, and I heard this new company is hungry like a wolf. All right. Some of you will get that. All right, Matt, let's talk about the market opportunity. I was surprised to see this.
Yeah, an estimated 20 to 25% of homes for sale may have assumable mortgage loans, but outdated systems and processes limit their use. And most assumable mortgages are tied to FHA, VA, and USDA loan programs, and private lenders rarely offer them. Though that could change
as the demand grows.
Right.
What are the barriers, Matt, to this?
So a couple barriers to adoption are transactions can require a large cash down payment to cover the gap between the home price and the remaining mortgage balance.
So if I'm going to buy a $500,000 home and my mortgage balance is $200,000, and you want to assume that you got to come up with the other $300 in cash or in some kind of secondary finance.
Correct. So that's a big, I would say, barrier to entry for many people, especially a first-time home buyer that would want to assume that. But those of you that may carry a mortgage balance that is not as that high, it's advantageous for someone to assume it. And then the second barrier to adoption is the process tends to be slower and more cumbersome than obviously traditional financing because it's not done that often. It's been out there, but it's few and far between deals are done with an assumable mortgage for those reasons.
I think it's worth asking when you're going in for a purchase, Matt, is this mortgage assumable? And if your mortgage is assumable, it's worth putting into the listing agreement or your listing information to say, hey, I have assumable mortgage.
Right. And I would say you real estate pros out there, this is just something to look at to help understand the business side of this. If this makes sense for clients you're working with, if your client asks you about assumable mortgages, have the baseline understanding and information that you could share with she or he about what an assumable mortgage is and if it is a potential opportunity for your transaction.
Matt, and I'd love we can get this information for next session, but I'm willing to bet that most assumable mortgages are owner occupied. So although investors would get excited about this kind of thing, I think owner occupied is going to be the key to that assumable mortgage.
I would agree with that 100%.
Okay. Any other final notes on the assumable?
On this, no, it's just that there is a new company that's coming out with this. It's available in a handful of states right now. It's not a nationwide thing, but we will see what happens as we progress.
Okay.
But yeah, there's always tons of news coming out. As Steve said, our new investor division from Land Trust is an exciting new
and our
thing.
partnership with the Mastery program, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, there's more to come on that, but yeah, that's exciting.
Matt, and the big news is the Cubs are in first place, and are we halfway through the season? Not yet.
Not yet. I think the All-Star break is technically.
We got a playoff team here in Chicago.
I'm liking.
On the north side.
I like what I see. They start a series with the hated Brewers today.
Yes.
So hopefully the Cubs can prevail and continue on their winning streaks. But yeah, they've been fun to watch. Their lineup was hitting a ton.
Yep.
And then they started playing Pittsburgh, the last place team in the NL Central, and they scraped by with 1 run, 2 runs. A
lot of good pitching in that.
A lot of good pitching, but yeah. So the Cubs have been fun. The White Sox. They have the Pope on their side, so there's nowhere to go but up.
Right, I agree with that. Okay, market trends. Thank you for viewing. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and we will see you next week.
Take care.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.